Welcome. Hi, Jason. Oh, wait, no, hold on. We're going to do this right.
Is this your
Uh,
first time, Ben?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's I'm No Expert, the podcast about everything and nothing. This is your co-host, Ben Hardy, and with me, as always, is Jason Huey of Prometheus Lights and 47s. I did that to placate you. I did that for you. Just the proper intro off the top, sir.
Yeah, well, I'm a little demanding, so
I'd ask if you're happy,
there
but
it is.
I think I know the answer to that one. You're fine. You're
I'm
probably
fine.
fine. That's fine. That was fine. The way I did that was fine. It was
It
acceptable.
was usable.
Straight down the middle average. It was usable. There it is. That's a new one.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. The most impossible person to please. But I like that because I will forever, I'm going to forever just try to get you to be pleased with anything, just anything. And
Yeah.
that I will not quit, Jason. See what I did there?
I see what you did there. Strangely, I was thinking about this last night. I realize I am difficult to impress, but I'm not going to apologize for it.
No, you shouldn't.
Like you want the royal you want me to be impressed? Like, bring it. Games only.
Listen, I told you yesterday. I said, do not change. Do not ever change. Because that is what makes you you. I know the bar should be super high. Yeah.
I mean, it's a standard that I aspire to. I realize I don't always impress, but like, gosh darn it, why do it?
Why
otherwise?
I'm learning from you every day, every week. In my life, I feel like I maybe give people too much credit, and I think I'm a cheerleader. I'm an encourager. I'm like, good job, you. And I should probably be like, especially with Grayson, my 5-year-old. Yeah, fine. So you learn like some addition. Great. Show me calculus, kid.
Yeah, that's right. Always set the bar 10 steps higher. I think it takes both types of personalities to make the world go round. I mean, I often wish I was more generous, and I don't know what this has to do with quitting, but I feel like there would be some benefit to me if I was more generous.
Benefit to you or to the person that you're being
I mean, both.
To?
I don't know. For some reason, I feel like there's some risk in being like overly emotionally generous.
What is that risk?
I don't know. Vulnerability, Ben.
Oh.
Letting the whole world know about it.
No kidding. Just good.
I mean, but
it's patting like a person on the back and saying good job is vulnerability to you.
I know. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, but no.
It's not one of my most favorite personality traits. But
I'm sure you're not alone.
It is one that I live with and manage. But you can also rest assured if I'm ever like, that was decent work, you can be like, oh my God, thank you so much.
And that's where I'm. That's sort of
I live on praise.
Now. Yeah, no, that's where I'm at. When you say more than fine, anything that is like a tick above fine or acceptable, I'm like, okay, that was.
It's above average.
It's above average.
There's a lot of average in this world.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, listener. This week this was Jason's idea, and it's a little alarming when you think about it. When to quit? You know, it obviously begets a lot of questions like, oh no. Oh no, what's going on in Jason's head right now? But it's a cool one because we've talked about leadership. We work in like perseverance and grit and resilience into various episodes. Quitting is the thing that we don't encourage. Winners never quit is the first thing that comes to mind. We never talk about
never win.
The positive. Yeah, we never talk about the positive side of quitting. I don't see many leaders who talk about it either. So this one intrigued me, and I want to know
quitting.
What inspired you first. Let's just talk about the genesis of this idea. That's.
I don't know. Life.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all through life, when you're doing something, at least for me, I'm like, should I quit? I realize there are some people who never have that thought, which is kind of spectacular. That is not me. So yeah, I don't know. Just I'm hoping somebody can relate to this who's listening, but sometimes you just ask yourself, like, is this worth it? Do I want to keep going?
Have you ever had a person in a leadership position, like a teacher or a coach or any of the countless sort of leadership icons like a Jocko Willink or a Tony Robbins, ever talk about quitting, about the virtues of quitting?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I feel like you could, and we're going to do that here. We're going to spin quitting as a potential positive. Like, I mean, once you think about it, I feel like that argument's not terribly difficult to make. But it definitely feels like the majority, at least in my perspective, the majority of the connotation of quitting is negative, and that's like something that you should not have done. So I don't know.
I guess it's all.
Maybe we'll answer that question by the end of the podcast.
I think the simple answer, and we can just sort of call the podcast episode a wrap. Is it's all about context.
Yeah,
like context matters, and so that's a wrap. And we'll talk to you next week.
Not in the news though.
When I was the topic triggered something in me when we were growing up. We lived in Pittsburgh. We lived in a suburb of Pittsburgh. We lived like right behind our elementary school, and I guess I don't know what it is, 6 years old through like 10 or something. We had next door neighbors on either side who had kids our age. So Mike and Eric on one side, and then Stevie on the other, and then me and my two brothers. And we would head over to Mike and Eric's backyard. It's probably like, I don't know, half an acre and bordered by some trees. And this is when we started, everyone was playing, like kids would play. There was no phones. We'd do pickup games. And the one that we'd always do was football. And Josh and Eric, Josh was my older brother, Eric was the older of the two over there, would always end up on a team together against me, Nate, and Stevie. And they dominated because they had the size and the speed. And they would score like 2 touchdowns, and we wouldn't score a touchdown, and I would just go, I quit. I would quit every game. Every single time we tried to play, I'd be like, I quit, because we weren't having any success, and I felt like the deck was stacked. Whatever, there's no excuse. I would quit, and I would walk through the bushes back home, and like everyone would be like, What are you doing? And I earned a reputation as a quitter, and then somehow I stopped. I'd rather lose than be the quitter, because it's clear I was disappointing people. But I remember I had a reputation as a quitter. I remember being a quitter. I remember those feelings, like the mixed feelings of sort of shame, anger that I was losing, and then the shame that I was like walking away from a game that depended on my presence in order to continue.
Right.
And so there it is. I'm being vulnerable, Jason. I was a quitter as a kid.
Yeah. I mean, that's fascinating. Like, what do you think turned that around for you?
That's a great question. I think one was realizing that there was a deep disappointment felt by my peer group and my siblings by my actions, that I was letting them down. The game ended because I pulled myself out of it.
Yeah.
There was that. And then I think probably I'm sure my dad maybe had a talking to me about like quitting. I think that the subject of quitting probably came up more and more as I was a kid, like at a paper route. And maybe I thought about quitting, and my parents had to talk to me about, quitting and sticking with something and making a commitment to something and sticking with it. And I probably ended up sticking with something and feeling like better about sticking with it than I probably would have if I had quit and walked away. But I think probably mostly it was I turned into a person who wanted to please others around me, like strove for acceptance in a social group, and realizing that being a quitter was like the fastest way to lose your sort of status and respect among your peers. So
right, like that. I mean, in that context, the negative impact of quitting is worse than the negative impact of losing.
Yeah. And then getting into sports as a kid, soccer, you become more exposed to professional sports, and you observe professional sports with your your dad and maybe your dad's friends, and you begin to pick up on their praise for the athletes who persevere and show grit,
Yeah.
who continue even in the face of like certain defeat. And you go, oh, okay, that's what is respected by my
Right.
dad and these adults who I respect. And so therefore I'm going to strive for those things. I'm going to strive to embody those things.
Those are the ones they write songs about.
Yeah, exactly. No one writes songs about the quitter, or they do, and it's not the song you want to hear.
Yeah.
So it triggered the topic triggered me because it brings back those memories. It brings back those feelings, those really mixed emotions. And you're a kid at 7 or 8 or 9, and you're still sort of learning what emotions feel like and learning social group dynamics. And when you quit a thing that others depend on you for, that can have a real emotional impact on a growing
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is maybe one of the most difficult things, I don't know, for kids to sort of confront and overcome. As one is developing, and some people never learn to overcome it. Um, but I mean, I like, my kids are 9 and 6, and they are well in the range of, quitting a game because they're losing. And so, we try as best we can to, try to teach them to be graceful losers, but that's really tough. That's pretty emotionally sophisticated, and sort of in touch with yourself. And yeah, I mean, so losing is very, very hard. So you're talking about context earlier. I mean, I wonder if right now the context is, the definition of quitting in this context is stopping doing something because you are losing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you stop doing something when you're winning, that's like a well-timed retirement or whatever, right? Like,
Sure.
quit when you're on top, I guess, is
Sure.
the other phrase that is bouncing around in my head.
Yeah, there's something to that. I think there was a recognition. I don't want to try to justify my actions quitting those games. I think about it more often than I probably should, but I think that I recognized very quickly in those games when it was Josh and Eric against the other three, that the deck was stacked. I just recognized that the physical disparity between the two teams was insurmountable, that it was not to be bridged, and it wasn't a fair fight. And so
And probably
I thought,
intentionally so, right? Because they wanted to win.
I think it was. We were all kids, so they had to navigate that too, probably not wanting to make an even team. But I think in their mind, they felt, well, it's 2-on-3. You guys are 3, we're 2. But it didn't matter, because when you have a foot height advantage in football, you just jump higher and it's a touchdown every time. But I think recognizing that the deck was stacked was part of it. Was like, this isn't fun. I'm wasting my time. Like, I will pursue a thing if it's an even playing field.
Right.
It's funny you mentioned kids quitting, because Grayson, he knows some card games now. There's a card game called Garbage that he plays. Candyland we play, and he has a hard time when he loses. He will actually just throw the board up in the air, and everything goes everywhere. It's really funny. It's funny.
Losing sucks.
Losing sucks, and it's really hard. It's really hard to balance that, and then balance, like, I want him to have some success. So there are also games we play where I can, like, kind of intentionally lose or not do as well, because I want him to have that taste of success. And I'm like, is that helpful? Like, should I be taking it easy on him? I don't know.
That's also a tough question to answer, because there's one archetype, I guess, where you, like, never let them win until they can legitimately beat you. Like the tough love dad or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is not me, but I try to walk that line.
Yeah.
Wherever that line is, I don't know, but
that was that chess Netflix series, Queen's Gambit. Was that what it was?
Yep.
The girl, when she first started, that was tough love. It was like, no, I'm not going to let you beat me. You have to earn.
Yep.
You have to earn that. Also, I felt like maybe she was of an age where she could handle that, and This is how you weed out the people who aren't cut out for greatness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she had the benefit of brimming with phenomenal talent as well.
Right.
I mean, I think the other piece of that too is like you need to be a graceful loser, but you also need to be a graceful winner.
Yeah.
So if you never win, I think you don't get to practice that.
Did you ever see the movie Whiplash?
I don't think so.
It's a movie about a kid who is I guess he's like a first year at a prestigious music college, and he's a drummer. And he gets sort of like discovered and promoted to second drummer and then first drummer underneath a very hard ass instructor.
Yeah.
And to the point where it becomes like physical, very deep emotional and at times physical abuse, like having a chair thrown at him across the room. And that instructor's justification was, this is how the greats are discovered. Like this is the only way.
Under extreme pressure.
And I'm only here to discover and train the next great. And if that's not you, I'm going to grind you down until you're done, until you quit. And I guess this is a good segue into one of our talking points, which is you wanted to talk about Navy SEALs and Josh Foster.
That was a good segue. I was just like, ooh, here we go. Yes. So I don't know if that means I am not destined for greatness, but I'm not sure I have that kind of grit, like in my life, just to persevere through any circumstance. And I mean, I think probably for a lot of boys, particularly who grew up in the 80s with the Charlie Sheen Navy SEALs movie, like I was like, yeah, I want to be a Navy SEAL. It did not take me long to realize that was not going to be a path for me. Kind of because I'm more of a quitter than that requires. Right? I was like, oh no, and so my personal example of that is like at soccer practice in high school. We had a coach one year who basically liked to make people run till they puked. And I was like, wait, I don't really want to do that. What's going to happen if I don't? And I felt like pretty guilty and I felt like a big wimp, but I was like, I'm very close to puking. I'm going to stop. So I did. And I mean, I like still like the idea of that makes me feel uncomfortable even now. And I guess that idea being quitting when other people were not, but I'm like, there's no value in this for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know where my limit is. I'm going to stop. I'm going to quit before I get there. And I think the whole thing with the SEALs is you have to always be willing to go beyond that limit. And I mean, in the sense that you don't have one. Like a limit is a pretend thing in your mind. Totally true. But in my mind, I don't know. It's less pretend.
In your soccer example, though, it lacked clear consequence. It lacked clear reward and consequence.
Yeah, there was definitely no reward. It was just like, we're running wind sprints right now or whatever.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was like literally we would do it until somebody threw up.
Just one person. Just as soon as one person threw up, you were all done.
I think part of me is like, I might be making that up, but that's sort of what my memory was.
Yeah. I guess that's one thing. If it's everyone runs until they throw up. It's like, all I'm doing here is proving to my coach that I'm willing to go this far to the point of throwing up. And the consequences for not doing it are not, I'm going to lose my spot on the team.
No, and that was the thing. Like, I can't remember if there were supposed to be consequences or not, but I was just like, I'm not doing it, like, whatever. And it turned out there weren't any consequences, which, I mean, I feel like I probably would have been more mad about it, like if I couldn't play in the next game or something, because I didn't run till I threw up. I mean, I don't know. Like, I assume if
Soft.
you're
Just so soft, Jason.
I, I'm not going to deny it. I'm not the hardest dude out there, okay? But I feel like, if you're Navy SEAL material, like, yeah, you'll run till you puke, and then you'll run some more.
And then
I don't know.
and then some. I mean, well, the reward and the consequence are clear. Like, ring the bell and you're done.
Yeah.
Make it through everything, and there you go. Like, all you've done is persevere. Not all you've done, but all you've done is just not quit. You've said, I'll take everything that you throw at me and I will just not quit.
Yeah.
And it's all designed to,
which is astounding. But I mean, that's like weeding out the weak, right?
That's
like the hard way.
Yeah. Which, again, like, the stakes are different there. The stakes are much different.
Yes.
The whole point of that is to discover the toughest warriors, is to forge the toughest warriors in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my Josh Foster example, am I supposed to call him out? I take that back. Josh was a buddy of mine in high school, and that it's just maybe the one example of someone I know who like didn't have a limit. He would just go no matter what. And I mean, I think he ended up going into the Air Force and doing something. So he did go into the military, but like, that dude would not quit. So all of us were like, well, he's the right material. He's Navy SEAL material. But yeah, I just remember being like, man, I am not like him. As I sat there on the bench, like, while everybody else was running by me puking.
It's interesting. I don't remember my younger brother Nate being particularly like one way or another. I think as he recognized, I think early, like 6th grade, 7th grade or something, he had a goal sheet in middle school, and it was, I want to be a Navy SEAL, and 100% inspired by the movie, by the way, 100% inspired by it. But, he as he got older, get into high school, obviously like did his research and understood a little bit better, like what that meant. And it wasn't going to be like jumping off a bridge for fun on the way to a wedding and all the crap associated with that movie. But he developed a real stubborn streak, like a very big stubborn streak. And if he wanted something or was going to do something, he was going to do it. And no one was going to tell him, nothing was going to stop him from doing that. And I think that served him. He set a goal, and he went there, and it was, mind over matter. He never shared like a ton of details about his time at Buds. There was one exercise that they did, one test that they did in the grinder, which is like their open space where they do all their PT push-ups and sit-ups and stuff like that. And they had everyone do, I guess what they call it, an iron cross. So you have your fins in your hand and you just hold them out to the side.
Yeah.
And it was last one standing, like basically last one to put their arms down. And he was the last one. And I don't know if anyone's ever like tried to hold something out in their hands for very long. I guess fins doesn't strike me as like the heaviest thing, but it was more just
no, but you do
duration.
It for more than like a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, to me that stood out, and it was just his stubbornness more than anything else. Capacity to suffer, sure, but really just like stubbornness and determination to be the best, even in that class.
See, that's the kind of physical effort I don't understand though, because I feel like if I'm going to do that, like my body will just quit.
Yeah. Yeah. The muscles themselves will just say no.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, body, this is mine, to like hold your arms up. And body's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it calls to mind another Navy SEAL, David Goggins, who we've talked about on this show. And he's just known now for putting himself through physical suffering. Just that's what he does. He just says the less comfortable, the better. And he's been a SEAL. He's been like a fire jumper. He's gone back and like tested himself again and again. And his saying is like, when you think you're done, you've got like 80% left. Like when your brain tells you that you're done and you have no more, he's like, you're barely scratching the surface. Or maybe it's like 40% more. So even then, in those instances, when you think your muscles are telling you that you don't have more, it's really just your brain tricking you. And that's what he would claim. And so he's found this ability, like callousing the mind,
Right.
and found this belief system that is, when I feel that first, time to quit message, he's able to just overcome it and go, no, I actually know that it's not. And I know that you're just trying to trick me. And I have like 40% more, which is a skill as much as anything.
I think there's also some advantage to being at like an Olympic level of fitness.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly for these physical tasks. I don't know.
But that's something that you develop. I mean, I think few people enter, like Buds, for example, as Olympic athletes. Many of them come in, and I don't think they're at like the best shape they will be. But part of the process is to get them into better shape, to do the tasks that are, demanded of them. And then it's like, do I have the willingness to push my body to achieve that level of fitness? Because it does require all this suffering.
Yeah.
I don't know. Cold is another thing. Like I think people have a physiological advantage. Some people do to withstanding cold. And that's one of the things that gets a lot of those guys is just sitting in the surf.
Yeah.
The cold Pacific surf for extended
periods of time. But you need those
guys
that can do that.
Yeah. You need those guys that can do that. Yeah.
This also reminds me of David Blaine.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't know. He's had an interesting career. So for people who don't know David Blaine, which I can't imagine is that many people, he's like a magician. Like I think he started out as a street magician, right? But now he's transitioned into this thing where he does these insane physical challenges. And I don't know. It was like a couple months ago. I don't know why. I just started watching all of his videos because I'd been like aware that I don't know what he like lived in a glass box like 60 feet in the air in Times Square for like a week or something, and froze himself in ice. And actually, I was researching breath holding, and so I found. Let's see if I can circle this all together. I found this YouTube channel. I can't remember what it's called right now. Sorry, and the channel is this guy teaching himself things. So he'll be like, I'm going to learn to juggle. My goal is to juggle 3 balls for, 30 seconds continuously. And he films the whole thing.
I love it.
And so he just like does skill after skill after skill. And one of them was breath holding. And he's like, I want to learn to hold my breath for more than 3 minutes. But so David Blaine was doing a stunt, I don't know, where he was trying to break the world breath holding record. He's competing against professionals who do this and like free divers and all kinds of things. And he's like, basically, I'm just a dude. I can't hold my breath for more than, like a minute and a half. I'm going to hold my breath for 6 minutes. And it was just sort of was about his journey, sort of mentally and physically, like trying to train his mind and his body. And he also did it like live. And I think, one of the things you're supposed to do is get your heart rate really low. So like he was good at doing that. I think in practice he achieved it, but when he tried to do it live, there was just like too much stress. And it's like the crowd is like outside screaming and you're like trying to concentrate and relax. So he actually drowned at the end of it. And like they had to revive him.
Oh, wow.
And I think maybe he actually did break the record. I don't know. Go watch the video, but he drowned doing it.
Damn.
That's pretty serious.
That is going beyond the point of quitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did it make you feel to watch him bring himself to the point of drowning, knowing that you quit running because you didn't want to throw up a little bit?
I'm not going to hold my breath for 6 minutes, is what that tells me. But so I was like, maybe I should try this breath holding thing. Because I used to scuba dive a lot, and I won't say that I free dove, but, snorkeled and liked diving down to the bottom and seeing how long I could do that.
Yeah.
But 3 minutes is a long, long time.
6 minutes is a long, long time.
It's ridiculous.
Your body shouldn't be able to last that long without oxygen. It doesn't feel possible.
And it's funny. I feel like this is partly just the media playing it up, but he's like consulting physicians and stuff beforehand, and they're like, you'll get brain damage if you do that. And it's like, there are other people that do it. I don't know if you doctors know how to use the internet, but like, it's not It's not impossible.
Right.
There's some dangers involved, sure, but like,
don't tell us it's a guarantee that you're going to come up a vegetable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I came across a couple of resources, like Harvard Business Review. I was just trying to look at, what articles, what resources are out there on the positives of quitting, like essentially answering the question, like, when do you know when it's time to quit? And I found some interesting ones, but before I dive into them, what I want to do is talk about probably the most notable time in my life where I quit something that was really important to me, and it was soccer. It was the sport of soccer, which I'd done my entire life. This was just part of my identity. Played all throughout my youth, like into high school, played club soccer, went off and played college, played a little semi-pro, and then like coached it and played men's league and co-ed here in Vermont. It was just fundamental to who I was. It was how I didn't realize until after I stopped how important it was to my emotional, like my mental and emotional health, that it was an outlet there. It was a big part of my social life. It was how I got my fitness, which is a huge part of your emotional health too. And I tore my Achilles playing men's league soccer indoor a couple of years ago. And it's like an immediate, you're done even walking normal. You're done exercising with the lower half of your body for like 6 months. So soccer was out of it. Yeah. And the PT said really the earliest you could hope to get back on the soccer field was maybe a year, unless you were really aggressive about PT and everything went really well. And I was like 40 at the time, which is, that's a good long career, if you want to call it that, of playing soccer. And it put a lot of strain on my family because my kid was 2. I could no longer really hold him for a good spell while I was in this like cast. I was on crutches for a couple of weeks. Really hard for me to move around. I couldn't chase him around. I was sort of framed as kind of being selfish for putting myself in that, like putting soccer first. And I would tease out the idea of getting back. And Michaela, my wife at the time, was like really down on it. And I could understand that because it put a lot of pressure on her, me suffering this injury. So despite having, teammates ask me when I'm going to return, and even once I was like back to running and, I was able to jump and do all those physical things that I was able to do before the injury, even when I got back to that point, I was reluctant to get back into soccer because there was no guarantee. No one could tell me why it happened in the first place and how to 100% avoid it moving forward.
I mean, it seems like any injury like that, I mean, the chances of having the same injury again are much, much higher.
Yeah, there is a reoccurrence rate. And just given the fact that no one could tell me, exactly why it happens and how to avoid it. Right. I was like, I just don't want to risk this. So I stopped. I officially just said, I'm not playing soccer anymore. And I quit. I quit the thing that I probably loved more than anything else in my life, as far as like, aside from people. I loved doing soccer more than anything else in my life. And it's hard for me now. I have a hard time, like when people ask me, when are you coming back out? And I hesitate. I hesitate to say like,
you like done. Take a beat.
Yeah, I take a beat. And I'm like, well, maybe I could. And I have to come back to, no, I've hung up the boots and this is it for me. And this one article outlined these 8 points that we can go through, and I'd like to go through now and kind of like look at through the lens of that. And I was already debating in the lead up to getting this injury. I was already like sort of had an eye on, maybe is it time? I'm always asking myself, like, is it time to step away? And if you start asking yourself that as an athlete or in any situation, like there's probably reason to sit down and give that question more time. And one of these points is, okay, when is it time to quit? You're consistently experiencing more frustration than reward. And as an aging soccer player competing against like 18, 19, 20-year-olds, which is what I was doing when I tore my Achilles. Yeah, exactly. Roy Kent. Think about him a lot. I was having more failure on the field than successes, and mostly due to I'm just slowing down. I can't keep up anymore. And it became frustrating. There were still like highs winning as a team, but I also felt like I'm becoming the weak link on my team. So if you're experiencing more frustration than reward in the thing that you're doing, it's probably time to consider stepping away from it. You can't envision a possible solution or continuing this way. I think that's an interesting one. In my case,
seems mental.
Yeah, that does seem mental. I think in my case, there's no solution to aging. Like I could try to get fitter. I could do everything I could to like keep my body as fast as possible, but you can't arrest that process of slowing down. It's just what happens to athletes. So it's more just like coming to grips with, there's no solution to the aging process. Spending time on this thing keeps you from more rewarding endeavors or seriously damages your well-being. In the case of soccer, I mean, it was a rewarding endeavor, but given the fact that I was getting slower and it wasn't as rewarding, should I have stepped away earlier and like started to pursue something that, the speed and quickness and fitness wasn't as tantamount to finding success. And spending time on this thing seriously damages your well-being. Well, it did. Like I pushed myself to the point of a career ending.
Do you still feel it like now?
The Achilles?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Really?
Not at all. No. And
it seems like such a big injury to come back from.
Here's the amazing...
I have much more minor injuries than I am definitely feeling.
It is one of those, like, you see big time athletes who suffered, like Kobe Bryant suffered Achilles tear during a game, and he actually he got fouled. If I remember, he got fouled on that play, and he actually went back out to take the free throws on a torn Achilles. What I learned after doing it, the process of coming back from it, I didn't know this at the time, but there's actually two ways that you can address a torn Achilles. And the one way that most people are familiar with is surgery. So they do invasive surgery. They suture the two ends back together. And then the other way, which was sort of newer and a little bit experimental, was you put yourself into a boot that's has your heel elevated so that the two ends shorten the distance between the two, and they just slowly they find each other and knit itself back together. And you just every 2 weeks you just reduce the heel lift until you're back to walking flat. And that's the way I went, because I didn't want to do surgery. And it's effing wild to think about your body can heal. Your tendons will just find each
starfish,
other.
Man.
It's absolutely insane. And there was a study done in Sweden, exploring this intervention, and they found that there's almost no difference in effectiveness, the healing time, time to heal, or rate of reoccurring injury between the two, having surgery or not having surgery. So I elected to not have surgery. And anyway, I can do everything. I feel like I'm not, I probably could step out on the soccer field, be really slow. And I think there's probably a very low chance that I would tear it again, but I'm just not willing to do that.
I mean, so in the sense that you can't feel it, do you think you would be more timid?
Yes.
Because you're worried about it?
Yeah, even talking about it, I think about it. Even talking about it, I imagine myself out there doing the same sort of move that I did when I tore it, which was as simple as pivoting, and pushing off. That's all I did, was pivot and push off as fast as I could, and then boom. It was just a loud snap. And that's just happens 1,000 times a game. So how am I going to, how are you going to navigate that? And I have no desire to go out there and do a thing that I did 100% every time I was out there.
And do it 80%.
And do it there's just no point. That wouldn't be fun for me. So you're staying for the wrong reasons. You're staying for the wrong reasons. I guess what would be the reasons I'm staying in soccer? It would be health, fitness, social connectivity, finding joy in victory. I don't know. Those seem like the right reasons. I'm not talking myself back into doing it. I guess I just want to encourage you and the listener to also be thinking about situations in their life where you thought about quitting. A job is the most common one. You're staying
Yes,
for the
yeah, we
wrong
should. I
reasons.
mean, I guess part of this is talking more broadly because I mean, before we recorded, I was like, well, everything that you've stopped doing in your life, you've quit, right? Like every job
Yeah.
you've ever had,
Yeah.
unless you got fired. Um, but yeah, like, is that quitting or is that? I mean,
Like I'm staying for
again,
the
I guess
wrong
it's the
reasons.
context. Like,
So like in the context of a job, if I'm staying because the pay is good, but I'm miserable, like staying because the pay is good and you're putting, food on the table for your family and a house, a roof over the head, those seem like the right reasons, or those are at least good reasons.
well, I mean, I wonder if there isn't a sort of an issue with the word wrong, which is a judgment.
Good call.
Um, I mean, I'm not totally sure how I would rephrase that, but again, like this, even we should probably look up the dictionary definition of quitting, but it is contextual. It is very subtle. I think splitting that into right and wrong is maybe a not that an effective tool.
Although I would argue that maybe it is, in that anyone's reasons for quitting are completely subjective, and so one simply has to sit down and go, what is right or wrong to me?
Right. Yeah.
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 And then, well, it's interesting because the next and last point is, when is it time to quit? When your friends keep telling you to quit. So they're saying you're staying for the wrong reasons. Well, you don't know me.
Yeah. That one is, I mean, it is last, but I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes your friends don't know what they're talking about.
Again, like
If it's like everyone telling you to quit something, I don't know. I
yeah,
mean, I'm sure there's some examples from business, um, where everyone, family, friends, everyone was like, you need to stop doing this. It's obviously not going to work out.
yeah.
And they're a few years later, they're like, yeah, but how about that $1 billion? Right. So who's to say?
Who's
I
to
make your own
say?
decisions. Don't listen to your friends and family tell you when to quit.
I mean, you create or discover or cultivate trusted confidants in your life because you value their opinion, and to some extent they do know you, and then also to some extent everyone has blind spots or can be blinded
Yep.
by, for example, you get into a relationship and everyone around you can see that it's a terrible like it's never going to work. One, it's not working. That a person's not happy in that relationship or whatever else, and they all say like you got to get out of it, but you're so whatever it is, emotionally invested or just blind, that you can't,
Yeah.
you won't.
Trapped.
Yeah, you're trapped.
Um, yeah. So your friends keep telling you to quit. You should only listen to them if they're right.
If they are not wrong.
If they're not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um there was another time that stands out to me. I joined, I guess you could call it a startup. It was a company called Recess that was
Mm.
created by a Middlebury guy who actually he was a soccer player after me.
Is he a billionaire now?
No, not at all. So he started this company Recess with a couple other Middlebury alum, and then the other sort of founders, helped get it to a certain place, and then they took off. Like they branched out and did their own thing, and left my friend Alex sort of to nurture this baby on his own. And he told me all about it, and I was like, this thing is, this is amazing. Like I had all these ideas, and I could really see the value of it. And he's like, well, do you want to help? Like I need help. You could be a founder, or you can do shares, and did the whole like startup thing. And so essentially I became a founder, even though the basics of it were already like in place and discovered, and brought on another guy who was a good friend of mine who had real skills in like sales and stuff. And so Recess was this platform. Recess.io was the website. We were going to build an app for it. It was this platform that leveraged underutilized spaces in, like health or exercise facilities, like basketball courts or open spaces for soccer or lacrosse or ultimate frisbee. Leveraged underutilized spaces and basically brought together like-minded folks for pickup sports. And so what you do is you'd go on to recess, you'd find a scheduled like pickup soccer activity at the Sports and Fitness Edge. You would indicate your interest in it, like your commitment to it. And if the threshold for the minimum was reached, then you were charged and everyone showed up and they played. And
It's
you'd
your
have like,
crowdfunding recess.
it's essentially, yeah, essentially that's what it was. And it was like, sort of on the heels of the Uber and Airbnb model, which was, there's unused or underutilized something asset, and like we're going to find a way to like crowdsource it. And the events that we started in Burlington like went gangbusters. Like we started having too many people signing up. Like people were turned away. Everyone wanted in on like the Sunday 6 a.m. pickup soccer at the Edge, and we started doing lunch times because that's when all these facilities are free. And so trying to get people from their lunch on their lunchtime to come and play pickup sports. And so I came on. We actually raised money as a startup, hired a CTO, some guy who could help us like build out the app, develop it, and then we endeavored to basically launch this in Boston because we went out to San Francisco, like pitching some big VCs. And the feedback we got was like, this is awesome, but you haven't proved it yet. You need to do it, like it here in San Francisco or do it in a big
traction.
city. Yeah, get some traction. So we tried to do it in Boston, and we actually had some events going, but we just ran out of money. And it was this point where Alex, who this was his baby, like and I loved it. I was like, this thing could be gangbusters. Looking at the number of facilities across the country that you could potentially like, sign to start doing recess events. And you started thinking about like, oh my God, this thing, if it takes off, is going to be worth like X. And you get swept up in that whole startup mentality, and ran out of money. And these heart-to-heart conversations with Alex on quitting were like heart-wrenching. One for me, because I'd like adopted the dream and thought, this is incredible. Like we're getting people healthy. We're shifting like the whole society, the whole culture, so that lunchtime is about exercise, and employers are going to want their employees to go off and do this thing because they come back and they're more productive. Just thinking so big, and then going, the dream is over. Like this is not, it's just not working. The grind is too great. We're not getting traction. We've run out of money. And that was a big white towel to throw in, not only for me, but for Alex. And I think about that a lot for him, like this dream. And that was quitting. Like that was in my professional life, like my professional career, if you will. I will look back on that and say like that was the standout moment of threw in the towel, walked away, and I will always, I think, be haunted by the doubts of what if this thing had taken off.
Right. But I mean, I was going to ask if there's any company currently doing this, but that was a while ago, right?
That was a while ago, yeah. And there were a couple, like I guess you could call them competitors, who were trying to do similar things. They were like niche to a specific sport. Mm-hmm. They didn't have their platform wasn't sexy. It didn't look like they had any traction. And to date, I do not see anyone doing it. I don't see anyone still. So which maybe tells me that it was never going to be successful. Like there were challenges that were in place that couldn't be surmounted. I don't know. Or
like
maybe
a pandemic.
Yeah, well, that's why. Yes, and I mean, this was way before. We quit before the pandemic. Certainly, the pandemic would have shut everything down, gathering. But it's just interesting having those conversations. And I'm not a quitter, so there's a big FOMO piece to that, and that is when you have this dream, you think that this thing is going to be gangbusters, and you go to bed every night like envisioning that, seeing the future 5 years from now, and then going. And then just pulling the plug on that. That's a real challenge. That's really hard. FOMO for me is a real tough one. Walking away from something that, I feel could have been successful, and thinking someone else is going to do that now. And I'm going to kick myself. Like the anticipation of regret.
I mean, right. And that's the danger, right? With quitting anything, maybe, is like, is there still the potential for success if I just stick with it.
Yeah.
And there's no way to know. And I think that's what makes that choice difficult. I mean, if you do quit and somebody else does it later, you're like, oh, well, I should have stuck with it. It still doesn't mean that you would have been successful necessarily just because someone else was, because
True.
Maybe they were luckier or smarter or better funded or had better timing. Like, those are not necessarily things you can create. But yeah, like if you had stuck with it, or even now looking like, well, no one else has done it, like, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Maybe nothing, maybe something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the flip side of quitting is not starting as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we approach this from the opposite end of the spectrum, because I mean, I think in what we're talking about, the idea of quitting is ultimately wrapped up in some sort of potential reward or success, and whether you will get it or not. But I think again, the other piece of that is like, you can't quit something if you never start it.
Yeah.
You can't be successful if you don't try. I was hoping that would be sort of deep, but
No,
I think it just kind of trailed off.
No, it is. It is. I think Mark Zuckerberg, love him or hate him, he spoke about that, I think, at a college graduation, and it was that before he built Facebook, he built tons of other apps, like a dating app, like all these other things that he built that didn't amount to anything, that anyone would look at and say, compared to Facebook, those other endeavors were failures because they didn't amount to anything. But you have to step, it's the classic, like, you've got to step up to the plate and take a swing.
Yeah.
The worst thing is not doing it, or the worst thing is being a critic and never stepping foot in the arena. And so I look at these things like Recess, or stepping away from soccer. There's a couple others too, trying to get this television series off the ground, trying to get a PBS thing on maple syrup, the maple syrup industry. Like, I've taken some swings and they haven't materialized, and each one of those things ended in me and anyone else associated with it saying, okay, we've tried, it's not working, we're going to move on to something else. And that was quitting. And embarrassed to like have told people in my life that I'm trying this thing, and feeling so confident that it's going to materialize. And then later, the updated conversation is like, yeah, no, we quit. And that's like, it's a shame-filled moment and conversation to have. But at the same time, I go, well, how many people wouldn't have even tried at all? So you're right. You're right. Not everything that you attempt is going to be a success. In fact, if you're destined for any success, you will probably have more failures along the way. And those failures, probably many of them will have been you quitting the thing for whatever reason. You're destined for any of these reasons that we've listed. So better, I guess the last point is better to have tried. It's okay to quit. It's okay to quit. Better to have tried. And if your energies are better served moving on to the next thing that you feel more passion or more, motivation by, that's okay. Like, it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think if you're going to quit something, you also have to embrace the disappointment in general, but man, of somebody else being successful at the same thing.
It's grief, right? It's navigating those phases of grief to acceptance.
Like, I could have, I could have been happy or famous or, a billionaire or whatever it is. Like,
right.
But that's life, man.
That is life.
I mean, I think for me, ultimately, it's like, do you believe in it? Because like, once you stop believing in something, even if that is, I mean, belief is mental, right? So once you lose that, like, can you get it back? Or do you just need to move on to something else? And I think for me, that's what it comes down to, is like, do you still believe in it? And I mean, I think that's what the bullet point where it's like, you can't envision a possible solution or continuing this way. For me, that is like, have you lost faith?
Have you lost faith?
Bringing that one.
Yeah, and I don't want anyone to walk away from this thing thinking like it should be any easier to quit that dream of yours. I think it's important to sit down at times when you're feeling immensely frustrated in whatever pursuit you find yourself swept up in, and going through these points, just taking the time to go through these points. But I think that, to me, I will always find reason to praise that person who continued, even at the expense of X, Y, and Z. Because I do feel that most of the great things that have come in our lifetime by people at the pinnacle of whatever has come at great sacrifice as well.
I was going to say, there's also no success without some kind of sacrifice.
Yeah. And so, you look at this, like, your time would be better served doing something else for your well-being. Yeah, sometimes you go without sleep because you are so committed to this thing, and that is a sacrifice that has to be made. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Is it worth it to you? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny for me, like, sometimes that changes daily, whether it seems worth it or not. Or, it could be a longer trend in your life as well.
Yeah.
And I think, like, if you've lost faith or if you don't believe, like, I mean, that's what a crisis of faith is. Like, you could get it back, but I think that's when you try to think about, like, is it worth it? And what's your goal? Like, where are you going? Because you can't figure out how to get there if you don't know where there is. So, like, what are you working for?
Yeah.
What are you working towards?
Yeah.
And I think you have to have that clarity in order to do any kind of self-assessment about quitting or continuing. Because, like, well, what are you quitting, or what are you continuing? And if you can't fundamentally answer that question,
yeah,
I think that's where you need to start.
That's a fantastic point. That's starting at the beginning. Like, if you don't have that goal and that vision,
that's where things begin.
That's where they begin. If you don't have that goal and that vision, and then along the way probably set some milestones, you're probably more likely to quit because you don't feel like you're getting anywhere. You don't feel like you're getting closer to your goal. Like, there's the peak. Also, am I getting closer to the peak of that mountain?
And I think that's also a great point about milestones, is that, it is a journey. So it is good both, and, I think healthy, operationally and emotionally, for you to have some steps in between, so you can measure your progress.
Yeah.
So, Ben, I think it's time to answer the question: when is the right time to quit? Go.
When you've just about reached...
Never, Ben. Never is the answer.
When you've just about reached an hour into the podcast, and I have faith that none of our listeners have quit up until this point. However, Jason, and I'm not calling this quitting. However, I think we've probably expired.
Shall we refer to it as signing off?
Signing off, yeah. The podcast is not quit. There's always another episode.
So I signed off on that one. That's different than what that normally means.
Listen, we totally forgot to include any sort of Maker Minute. David
Blaine.
I got nothing. Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. David Blaine. I love it. We'll put a link to maybe his most outrageous feat in the show notes. And
the breath holding where he drowns.
The breath holding too, where he drowns.
It's pretty legit.
To you, listener, may you quit only when the time is right, and not a second before, or
after,
or never. Jason, this is me signing off, and you're no quitter. I'm no quitter. I'm also not an expert.
That was great. I'm not going to follow that. I'm Jason. I'm no expert. Thank you for your time. We will see you on the next episode.
Bye-bye.